Hi everyone, Rachel over here at Salsa. Welcome to our next partner pep talk. Today we've got Media Cause on the line with us, and we've done a few other pep talks with them throughout the year. We're sort of doing this whole series. Every other month we welcome them back. So here we are in August, already starting to talk year-end fundraising. Always creeps up on us, always too soon it feels like, but now's the time. So we're going to get some really good tips and tricks from Media Cause and hear how to start preparing for end of year. Before we officially get started, a few housekeeping things to note. Number one, this is being recorded, so everyone will get a copy of the recording today along with a copy of the slide deck, and you can get that in your email after the webinar finishes up here. Number two, everyone's muted as usual. For any questions, you can use the questions chat box in your GoToWebinar control panel. Feel free to chat in questions as they come to you throughout the presentation, and we have some time built in at the end that we'll go through those and ask the experts on our call today to answer those for us. Number three, just a quick audio and visual check, making sure that everyone can hear me okay and also see the screen which says year-end fundraising. If someone could just chat that in that you can both hear and see the screen, that would be great. Okay, so it looks like we are good to go. I'll pass it over to Media Cause.
Great, thank you, Rachel. So we are Sarah Dunlap and Dan Reed. We are two members of the growing fundraising team at Media Cause, which is a digital marketing agency that accelerates the growth and impact of organizations doing good in the world. So since 2011, we've worked with over 300 nonprofits, social impact startups, foundations, educators, and philanthropists to create lasting impact. So what we're doing today, we did our best to distill all the different things you need to do for successful fundraising down into kind of 5 key parts, which is developing a donor-centric approach. It's segmenting your file so you're asking the right things of the right people. It's making dynamic ask strings and testing so you know who you're talking to and how to do it best. It is sending the right amount of email and also sending the right kinds of emails. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Dan for just a quick recap of all that happened in giving season 2018.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, so just looking back at 2018, I think everyone kind of realized that it wasn't the greatest performance year over year. And so there were a number of questions that came up. One, did the government shutdown play a role? Or perhaps the stock market taking a nosedive in the latter part of December, that could have possibly had an effect. And what about Giving Tuesday? Did people give then and not at any other part of the year? And so what we found after looking at all that, the answer to all those questions is yes, definitely, maybe. December email revenue was reported down 18% compared to the previous year, while the email volume remained flat. And overall digital revenue was reported down by almost 10% year over year. But Giving Tuesday continues to become more and more of a prominent piece of the year-end pie, with organizations seeing 16% increases year over year in what is now a multi-day affair. So that's on the next slide is some of the good news, and it is around Giving Tuesday. So the online revenue was up across the board for Giving Tuesday, and Giving Tuesday appeals specifically raised 27% more than they did in 2017. And the most notable here on Facebook, Giving Tuesday through Facebook increased by a whopping 178%, growing from 45 million to 125 million. So that's a huge point to make on Giving Tuesday. And the other flag to make on Giving Tuesday is the fact that it is in December this year. So it does kind of throw a wrench into your scheduling. But the point here is that exploring Facebook fundraisers around Giving Tuesday, it would be a really nice addition to your existing end of year plans if you don't already have them in place. So on the next slide on donor centricity, I think Sarah wanted to make a few points.
Yeah, So the good news about building a donor-centric approach is that it really isn't rocket science. It's just more a question of noticing what your audience responds to, looking at appeals, e-newsletters, surveys, and creating your content from there. So to put it really simply, just give the people what they want and make sure that they're the hero in the story. So when you ask your donors for money or you thank them for giving money, remember that they don't help you save lives or help you save whales or help you protect trees from getting clear cutted. They do those things. So don't let them forget that they're crucial and that without their support, your organization just wouldn't exist. And conversely, if a topic doesn't tend to resonate, just take the hint and stop pushing it. Because as much as we all want to believe our supporters are different and special, most data really does suggest they're people who want to make a difference and not necessarily really wonks in your field. So let's definitely show them the difference they're making and keep them the hero of the story. So speaking of, this is an example that MediaCause helped put together for our client, the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, following a bird watching event that doubles as one of their biggest fundraisers. So this shares a slideshow, and it's just a really warm statement of thanks for their support and content made especially for them. And it really just meets them where they are and shows them what they came here for, which is birds, just a lot of birds. So this is just one example of a single email, but donor centricity really is a must across your channels, an email, on your website, in your newsletters, and your social channels, really everywhere. Just make sure everyone who supports you knows just how important their contributions are, what they're used for, and what a crucial role they play in the organization. And I know it can be tempting, but maybe put a limit on like the number of tweets you send from that conference full of like 500 experts in your field. So it's also crucial to talk to the right people at the right time with the right content. And for that, I'll turn it back to Dan to talk segmentation strategies.
Yeah, so segmentation is a really important piece of the email strategy. It allows you to personalize your follow-up and your outreach in the context and state of your relationship. So, for example, it can improve conversions, the relevancy of messaging, and the targeting by donor level and behavior. And for giving campaigns, it usually makes sense to segment around donor recency. So for example, your active donors, your lapsed donors, or your deeply lapsed donors, but other options include the number of donations they've made, how donors were acquired, their gift size, their capacity to give, or even a more expert level treatment would be to consider how they interacted with previous email messages. On the next slide, in specific terms, this is a standard treatment strategy that we've generally work around for most of our clients, and so this is a lot of the way we think about our treatment plans are in these segmentations. So firstly, on active donors, these are some of your best donors. You want to acknowledge their support during the year and what they have made possible. You want to ask them to help you finish the year strong with a special year-end gift. For lapsed donors, you want to acknowledge that they have given before and ask them to renew their commitment. And here, you do not want to shy away from using words like renew, lapse, or pending in your email copy. For recent donors, a lot of the organizations that we work with sometimes like to shy away from asking gifts from recent donors, when in effect they are likely some of your better prospects to solicit. For these ones, it's imperative that you just make sure that you are acknowledging their recent gift and that you're asking them for the second special gift on top of that. Similarly, new donors, you want to welcome them to your organization and thank them for being a part of your mission. You want to just continue to make sure that you're acknowledging the recency of that gift. And then the non-donors on your file, for these folks, you might want to consider asking for a smaller gift. Hopefully try and get some lower hanging fruit. And you want to re-emphasize the point that year-end giving is a great opportunity to make a philanthropic contribution. And then last point here on suppressions, you want to make sure that you are suppressing the appropriate people from your emails. Not everyone on your file should be getting your messages, specifically folks that are inactive. And typically, we advise that anyone who has not opened or clicked an email in the last 9 months should, as a rule, be suppressed from your email file. The next thing we want to cover here is dynamic ask strings and some testing. Um, So here you want to make sure that it's important to not ask for too much or too little from your donor file. You'll want to consider testing your ask string now to find the right array, but you'll know that you'll not want to downgrade anyone by way of their year-end gift. And so small variations can have a pretty sizable impact. On the next slide, we have an example, again, from one of our clients, Cornell Lab of Ornithology. What you'll notice here are two very subtle but different ask string strategies based on the two different audiences. On the left side, you see their active donors and members whose last gift is less than 24 months ago and their highest previous contribution is greater than $500. And then you'll compare to the form on the right. It's a quote unquote more aggressive ask string strategy because on the right side, you see a treatment for folks that are their last gift was greater than 24 months ago. So the logic here is that the more deeply lapsed someone is on the file, the more likely you are to have to pursue a renewal by way of a downgrade, right? So to ask them for less than what they have previously given. Whereas your more active file, you can feel free to pursue a more aggressive ask string strategy that asks for a higher amount. And then next slide here, I want to talk a little bit about testing. So this was an example from a client that we had where we wanted to test cultivation emails within the context of an end of year appeal. And so our hypothesis was that adding more of these non-ask emails will lift the overall response rate for the appeals within selected segments on the file. So what we did was we added 3 additional emails that basically spoke to the programmatic elements of their work and as a rule had no ask in them. And then we split the file in half, and for one half of the file we included these emails, and for the other half we did not include. The entire file then got the entire treatment of the rest of the appeal. On the next slide, when you take a look at the detail, you can see compared to the control segment, there was 3% more gifts, there was 16% more revenue, and there was almost 13% increase in average gift. And so the 647 records in the control against the 667 records in the test. And so the big number there, though, of course, is the extra $15,000 in revenue. On the next slide, though, when we look at more detail, this is where I thought things were pretty interesting in this test. So if we look at the active donor segments amongst the control and the test, we saw 22 fewer gifts with 4.7% more revenue and a 9.9% increase in average gift. However, it was not statistically significant. But then when we look at the deeply lapsed and the lapsed segments, we see both increases in the number of gifts, the increases in the amount of revenue, and the increases in the average gift. And so we were very confident to surmise that by adding these additional messages into the mix of messaging would have ultimately increased revenue from all of those segments, particularly the deeply lapsed and the most recently lapsed segment. And then, so yeah, on our next slide here, ultimately our hypothesis was correct, that adding these emails lifted overall response for select segments. And we were ultimately very confident that adding these cultivations would lift overall email performance, particularly for donor retention amongst the latter half of the segments. I'm sorry, the more lapsed segments. What was a surprise to us, the test had little effect on the active donor segment, but we think we need to do more analysis to understand if there was statistical significance around the average gift. And just on the next slide, just a general point on testing. Wherever you possibly can, if you can layer in any sort of A/B test around subject lines or pre-headers, we would definitely encourage that just to optimize your emails during year end. This is simply a table with our winners and losers for a number of subject lines that we had, and I think it's important just to, wherever you can deploy a test, do so. And then I'm going to hand it back over to Sarah to talk through email volume.
Sure. I actually asked for this section of the presentation specifically because I'm always really excited to talk about email volume, mostly because I've learned over the years that it's really just counterintuitive. And I've become a really firm believer in volume, like a lot of it. You might think that you're asking too much. You might think that you're annoying people. You might think that the returns will really diminish quickly, and it just hasn't been true. So we hear it all the time that people are just afraid of overwhelming their email list, and that is a fair concern. But I can also promise you, your list doesn't notice your emails going by just half as much as you do. So M&R Benchmarks shows that nonprofits send an average of 59 emails per subscriber per year, which is 8% more than last year. And I don't mean to over-explain averages, but that also means a good half of nonprofits send more than that. And there can be a real cost to your organization if you shy away from volume, especially in crucial giving times like year-end fundraising. So I believe volume is important all year round, but especially on days like Giving Tuesday or 12/31, when staying on top of the inbox is really half the battle. And I'm not saying to necessarily send 5 emails on those days, even though I definitely have done that in the past. But I'm suggesting you push your comfort zone by an extra send or two on critical days like 12/31 and Giving Tuesday. Perhaps consider adding an extra chaser or fake forward on those days if you're not comfortable sending out multiple independent asks. But the math is honestly really simple and clear. Higher volume is associated with higher fundraising figures. And while be aware of it, but don't be so afraid of overwhelming inboxes because honestly, they're already overwhelmed. If you're on any campaign lists or even just like Bed Bath and Beyond, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You're not going to be the one sending the most email. And remember that end of year ends on December 31st, and afterwards you'll have an opportunity to say thank you and just back way off because for everything there is a season. And speaking of which, when you consider your cadence, maybe a hectic December, a quiet January, know that you can and should just be planning ahead. Planning your entire year, even if you need to fill in some blanks as time withers on, is a great idea just to ensure you have a balance of the right types of campaigns and everything you need from your team. So year end is a really great place to work back from, just making sure you space out your giving campaigns, infusing robust updates whenever you can that will interest your list, engaging them in ways that do not involve giving money, like advocacy asks, petition signatures, pledges, quizzes, games. It'll make your fundraising moments all the more powerful and keep your list from feeling too much like an ATM. So answering these questions and working back from 12/31 will help you plan your overall message cadence a lot more effectively. Speaking of which, we're excited to kind of go rapid fire down a few of our favorite year end and really all year round email tactics to cultivate and raise funds. So without further ado, okay, so first imagine that this is more of a long scroll and those pictures come to life with animation. So this is an email I worked on at my previous job, fundraising for global health equity, and I plucked it out from dozens of cultivation emails we sent in any given year. It isolates between 5 and 7 moments, kind of spaced out over the last year's accomplishments that donors made possible. And it says thanks before launching into a year-end fundraising series. So this obviously took a little bit of time and creative effort, and it demanded a design team that would kind of take my requests. But even if you don't have all those things at your organization, just copy and photos could really do the trick here. Just because it's not all laid out doesn't mean it can't accomplish some of the same exact things. And remember to Dan's previous slide, taking the time to report back wins, to say thanks, to cultivate your audience pays off really high dividends, and it means more money later. So another example of this is this holiday card that we really liked from the Human Rights Campaign from last year. Just consider a simple festive thanks around the holiday season like this one, just to express gratitude. It's timely, it's happy, it builds affinity at a really crucial time of year. Speaking of which, like Dan mentioned, Giving Tuesday is in December this year, which makes December pretty crowded and also even more important than it was last year. So As we mentioned earlier, email volume is going up every single year, and it's really important not to be left behind, and also to use a really compelling value proposition to explain why they should give you their gift. So I know I don't have to tell you that everyone and their mother will be promoting a matching gift challenge on days like Giving Tuesday. So don't be one of the few organizations that don't have one. I've personally seen tremendous luck by pushing it even further with a triple match or a 5 times match, and even once when I could convince my boss to let me a 10 times match that we targeted only to our deep lapsed donors and actually brought back dozens of them, which made people pretty happy. So a match is always going to convert, but it's really especially crucial at times like Giving Tuesday and the bitter end of the year to give your donors just a very compelling value proposition. And a match is just a great way to do that. So we've talked a lot so far about Giving Tuesday and 12/31 as really the days when you can expect to raise the most money. But between those temples, there are still a lot of weeks to fill when money is flying around, and you really need to jockey for your share of it. So we wanted to highlight the use of symbolic giving, like the International Rescue Committee just does so well. So you can see here, instead of asking for $63 to just kind of drive their mission forward, they ask for $63 to buy 3 newborn kits. This is a proven tactic in wide use across the industry, and it can really help lend specificity to unrestricted asks. So this type of thing works great in the middle of December when folks are in a giving mood, in a charitable mood, even in a shopping mood. And it's also really wonderful for tribute giving. Which is another timely way to raise money. So in the run up to the holidays, folks are looking for thoughtful gifts that are quick, that are easy. So position tribute gifts to your organization as a way to accomplish just that. It's quick, it's easy, it changes lives. You can even deduct it from your taxes. It's also not, aside from the middle of December, it's also just a really nice email and promotion on Black Friday almost as an alternative to the consumerism of that day and that season. So some organizations can pair this with symbolic giving, which works extra well, but I don't think that it is necessary. And finally, we're just going to hit on a few tactics and approaches that can really help rake it in during those final 5 days before the tax deadline. So when you're just bound to see some of the best generosity all year long. And at the risk of repeating myself too much, during times like these, you'll be surprised just how much you can raise by adding a few more cents or getting a little bit more direct than usual. So one such tactic that we wanted to highlight is using kind of a spreadsheet graphic like this one, which we helped make for the Cornell lab, kind of showing what they needed to raise. So this is a really different from your average email graphic, and it just shows them falling short by close to $19,000. And if you're falling short, I don't see any risk in saying so. If you're worried about hitting your goal, tell your supporters. Like, this authentic urgency and transparency really can convert in spades. And again, calling back to all the campaign emails, if you're on all of them like I am, you can see that they never seem to be on track with their fundraising goals. On the next slide, the supporter record really can accomplish something similar, which is getting pretty direct and at just telling people that we need your gift now. So in my last job for my last fundraising job for global health, we whipped out this tactic a few times a year. It gets pretty direct, but it also works and varies up the layout of the email and just reminds folks in a very easy to understand coded graphic that they haven't fulfilled their matching gift. So I should pause here and take a moment and like say the obvious, which is that this is an ugly email. It is. Like, it's not much fun to write because it's pretty transactional. There aren't any pictures, but that roughness really is part of what works here, and it really does grab the eye. And this, which is essentially telling people their gift is due, is not a tactic to use every day. It's pretty aggressive, but in moments like the final 5 days of the year, it is something that leaps out of the inbox when about a million other organizations are vying for your audience's attention. And finally, a beautiful countdown clock. So the first time I saw one of these was before the 2016 campaign in one of Hillary's emails. And the first thing I thought was that it was tacky and I hated it. But then I wanted to test it, and I was just absolutely floored when it converted about 3 times as well as a static graphic. So the only thing I can say about animated countdown clocks is that they work. They jump off the page, they grab the eye, they get the point across that this match or this tax year or this merchandise promotion is ending. And if you've never used one to your organization, it's really a must to try on days like 12/31 or Giving Tuesday. And if it makes you feel a little bit goosey like it made me feel, at least give it a test and see how your audience responds. You might be surprised. And with that, just happy fundraising. End of year starts now.
Yes. Thank you so much, Sarah, and thank you, Dan, as well. That was good information, some good statistics to kind of start out with as we start to head into end of year and begin planning. Before we get to questions, now's a good time for you guys to go ahead and start chatting them in. While we wait for those to come through, I wanted to mention a few things for our existing Salsa clients that are on the line. I realize some people are using Salsa, some people may not be. But for the Salsa folks, there are a few things that we went through in today's presentation that you can, strategy-wise, that Media Cause went through, putting those into action using the tools that you have here at Salsa. Number one is when Dan was talking about the donor recency and segmentation. Don't forget that you guys have the really robust query feature in both Salsa CRM and in Salsa Engage. And recently we've pre-built, I think it was somewhere in the 40s of pre-built queries inside of Salsa CRM that you guys can use. Use those queries, change them to meet your needs, and use that to segment and target your list through your email campaigns in Salsa Engage. We really, really do recommend that. You can't have the same message for all of your supporters. It should be targeted and very specific to what they've done throughout the year as we head into the end of the year. Additionally, we talked about ask strings inside of your forms and inside of your emails. I'm not sure if everybody saw, but in our latest release of Salsa Engage, we added that ability. So you can export a file out of CRM or whatever you're using and do some manipulation to the data, create a few extra columns, import that into Salsa Engage, and have that dynamic ask, those ask strings that you set up based on their past giving history, so that we're not asking someone who gave $10 this year to give $200 now. That might be out of their range. You can do it smartly by doing those dynamic ask strings. Inside of Salsa Engage, you can actually find in our help center the step-by-step instructions for doing those ask strings. I believe it's in the Salsa Engage section, and I think it's under the What's New June 2019 page. So you guys can look there and read through that. That's a really neat addition that we added to Salsa Engage. A lot of folks were excited about that. And then pretty soon, I hear we're going to be having some new notifications. When you get donations in internally, the notifications that are sent to you guys, we're going to be enhancing that. So be on the lookout for that email when that does release. I don't have specifics on it yet, but I do believe that that's coming. So that was kind of the donor recency ask string segmentation. And then another thing that they mentioned was testing your emails. We saw, some great science going on at Media Cause for testing those hypotheses. Don't forget, in Salsa Engage, you guys can do your A/B testing. We definitely recommend doing that. If you need help, look in Salsa Scholars, look on our help center so that you can, use those tools that Salsa Engage just has natively to put to use these strategies that Media Cause has talked to us about. And then two last things just to note. These are two other partners that we work with in terms of matching. Earlier this year, a few months ago, we announced our partnership with Double a Donation. It would be really, really great. Now's the time to sign up for Double a Donation. If you haven't already, get a Double a Donation account because you can use that inside of Salsa Engage. You can do that matching gift field. Someone can type in their employer's name, see if their employer offers matching, and sort of capitalize on that extra money that's being left on the table. If you have any questions about that, let us know. We can get you in touch with someone at Double a Donation. And then e-cards, we briefly talked about holiday cards, e-cards. I'm not sure, maybe a few of you were here earlier with us and our partners over at Corner Shop Creative. Corner Shop Creative created a really neat e-card functionality that's integrated with Salsa Engage. We're going to be hopefully doing another webinar with those folks shortly because we've had some updates to how the payment processing works for the donations that come through your e-cards. But if you are super anxious and you want to learn more about what the e-cards are and what Corner Shop has done, if you go to the Salsa videos link, which on our homepage, if you scroll all the way down to the footer, you can click on the link that says videos and filter on partner pep talks. You can see the e-card presentation. It's pretty short, so you guys can watch that and see what e-cards are all about. Just to give you another option, give your donors another way to donate and get involved with your organization. Okay, so that was everything that I had to mention. Just kind of connecting what Media Cause has told us about today and how you can apply those using the Salsa tools that you already have. So I'm going to pause here real quick. I see my questions icon just blinking away, so I know there's lots of questions here. If Sarah or Dan, you have anything to add while I read through these quickly, feel free.
Well, no, we just wanted to thank you for having us. We were excited to talk about it. I think it was a fun exercise for us to start thinking about year end in this part of the summer. So, I would say it's end of year can be daunting, but it's important to get a jump on it and try to make it in and compartmentalize it and make it in consumable bits so it's manageable.
Yeah, and I, for one, am certainly hoping for a less eventful end of year coming up than last year, which was a roller coaster every step of the way. So everybody, please cross your fingers that the markets hold up, that there aren't any major catastrophes. Just half of this is luck. So everybody hope.
Yes, certainly. And I know I had mentioned when we were preparing for this webinar, Sarah, that I wasn't going to show my screen. But I'm changing my mind. I actually am going to show my screen. So I'm going to take back presenter role here because we've gotten a few questions about the countdown clock in Salsa Engage. And I was going to try to put this into the thank you email for all of our attendees today, but I'm going to mention it now. We have some templates coming up that our marketing team is currently working on, and it does include a countdown clock in the emails that you guys are going to be getting. So I'll go ahead and pass this to myself. Okay. This is not in your Engage account yet. This is just in my demo instance. I don't have dates for when these end of year email templates will be available. Our marketing team is working on them now. But just a little preview for all of the attendees today. This will be sort of your bonus here. We're thinking of kind of going with a theme like this. Maybe you used the templates that we syndicated out last year, similar to that. And this will be really easy for all of our Salsa Engage users to customize, change the colors. Obviously, you'll add in your own text, but you can see here we have included the countdown clock for end of year. So that's really exciting. This is actually just simple HTML code. So when you go in and use the email template yourself, you'll be able to see that, and you can go in and do some editing. The editing is actually done in a different website, but really cool. So that's exciting that you guys can add that into your emails. Okay. Another question that we got here, I'm not sure if Sarah or Dan, one of you want to take this or which one of you want to take it, but a Giving Tuesday email list. Can you outline what that might look like, the email schedule, what the email schedule might look like leading up to Giving Tuesday?
Yeah, I can. I'll try and field that, and then Sarah, I'm sure you have some great ideas. But on Giving Tuesday, I would be thinking about. I kind of think about it around starting on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving with like a sort of a thank you message, maybe a year in review, kind of a very feel good, a warm thank you. It might be even something that if you do have some creative folks to really think really creatively about what just a nice thank you could look like. And then subsequently, you could start Giving Tuesday early. We see a lot of organizations think about it starting on Black Friday, and then or with like an earlier kickoff or like a pre-Giving Tuesday match kind of a angle. And then on Giving Tuesday itself, I think I would certainly welcome 2 to 3 messages on that day specifically, along with a potential follow-up, maybe on the weekend or the end of the week afterward. So certainly think about it in multi-day sequences for that actual day. And Sarah, do you have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's other, like Dan mentioned, it's more than just Giving Tuesday. So I would just want to underscore that you could have separate giving kind of promotions on days like Black Friday and also Cyber Monday, which has also become just a very important giving day for online fundraising. It's possible that you can have one match that starts on the morning of Cyber Monday and just ratchets up on Giving Tuesday, or you could have a Cyber Monday match up to 10K and then a Giving Tuesday match up to 50K. And like there's ways to use all of these days to your organization's benefit. So like I repeated 100 times, like the more you send, probably the more you're going to raise. So don't be afraid of using all of those days. The other thing I'd mention is that to Dan's earlier point about just segmenting your list right, you can also just get so surgical in your volume. So if on Giving Tuesday you send 2 messages to everybody or 3 messages to everybody, why not throw in a fourth just to people who clicked but didn't give, or just to people who gave last Giving Tuesday but not this Giving Tuesday? Like, there's just so many ways to amp up your volume and tailor your message without necessarily hitting every single person. So, yeah, I would just bear in mind that all 3 of those days are so important and that there's a lot of just crafty ways to be scraping more off the top.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe another way that people can keep track of this or take what's in their heads and their ideas and putting it down on paper, just like how you guys showed, putting together a schedule, working backwards from when you were going to send your emails out is specifically, of course, who those emails are going to. And if you have notes on who to suppress, who to include, I think that would be really helpful to kind of write out and put down on paper or on your spreadsheet, in addition to the dates and what the topic is and things like that. I think that'll be really helpful. And now's probably the time to start, as those ideas come to you, putting them down in a shared drive with your colleagues so everyone can be on the same page and adding their ideas to it too. I think preparing for Giving Tuesday and end of year this early really sets up all of our organizations for success. And it's really exciting. I really hope that the numbers are good this year. I know everyone here at Salsa is excited and we're ready to help our clients be as successful as possible. I'm sure Media Cause is the same way too. 2 things that I will note, some questions that just came through when I came back on towards the end of Media Cause's presentation. I kind of went through a whole list of things without having any slides to show. I will mention everything. I might put it in a nice document for you guys and share that with you in the follow-up email. So everything on the double donation and corner shop and the queries and ask strings, I'll put those in there so that you guys can recall it back and reference that as you're starting to prepare for end of year. And the second question that came through is if this webinar is being recorded. Absolutely. We're recording today's session. Everyone will get this recording as well as the follow-up slides too. So we'll hand those out at the end of the presentation today. Okay, so no other questions have come through. We'll wait a few more minutes for any other last minute questions that you'd like answered. Otherwise, I want to thank all of our attendees today for coming again to another Partner Pep Talk. We'll be welcoming back Media Cause coming here in October, which end of year fundraising will be just on its way starting then. So hopefully you guys will be able to take these tactics and strategies and start putting them to use. And also thanks to our presenters as well. We always are happy to have Media Cause share their wealth of information and their data too.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for having us.
Okay, so we'll hang out here for just a few more minutes. We'll wait for some more questions to come through. Okay, no other questions have come through. I don't want to keep everyone. Now everyone gets about 20 minutes back in their day, which I'm sure that'll be, easily used up probably pretty quickly here. Thanks again to everyone. Thanks again, Sarah and Dan. We'll talk to everybody again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.